I wanted to talk a little bit about stripping paint off of a control panel. This is the Atari Asteroids Deluxe Cabaret control panel. You see it's down to bare metal on the top surface. However, the front and the back still have adhesive. You can also see this particular one has 4 extra holes that were drilled on the top and 4 on the bottom to hold a piece of plexiglass on. Still not sure how I'm going to do that. The way I'm familiar with is putting something behind it, gluing it with JB weld, and then filling the top of the hole with, say, Bondo body filler. I'm a little bit concerned that the 2 holes on each end actually sit on the wood panel. You can kind of see the rusted area there. There's kind of a clear vertical line there. That's where it's resting on a wooden block. It's also a little bit bent there. Try to hammer that out. So if I put anything back there, the panel might not sit flush. It'll sit a little bit high. However, those did have rivets, and the rivets were really tall. And the ones in the back damaged the wood block a little bit. But the wood block doesn't go all the way to the end, I don't think. Well, the line does, though. Yeah, so I'm thinking if I put something there, it's going to have to be small, and it'll probably be okay. But what I'd like to do, I saw somebody post online, but I haven't seen any videos of it, is plumber's solder. So you clean up the area, the hole really good, and then you get plumber's solder, plumber's flux, and a propane torch. And the solder will fill the holes, these small holes in. For any bigger holes that you have to, cut some metal to fit pretty much in the hole and then solder around it. But the plumber's putty is evidently something that you can do at home. You don't need welding equipment, and welding equipment, I guess, can easily melt, or not melt, but warp panels if you try and weld, although those holes are so small. I'm almost wondering if that's really the case. But the plumber solder is supposed to be sandable. You could file it, sand it flush, and it can even be powder coated, they say, just like the steel. I'm not going to powder coat this. I'll just be spraying it black and then putting the replacement artwork on. But that's something I still haven't decided if I'm just going to glue like a penny or a dime behind it with JB weld and fill the hole and just call that good. But what I really wanted to talk about was what I used to get the control panel overlay off. And this is what I used to use up until this panel. I've done somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen control panels over the years that I've taken the art off, either because it was just nasty or it had been converted to a different game and I was restoring it. This one here had been completely spray painted black, even though it was the original artwork. I used isopropyl alcohol and removed some of the black paint, but I decided I wanted to just go ahead and replace the whole overlay, because in the front here it's totally cracked and rusted, and it wouldn't have been, I don't think, nice enough if I had just managed to strip all the black paint off and got down to the original overlay. So that's why I'm stripping this one down and replacing it, because this front corner is really bad. But this is what I used to use. And down here, danger, extremely flammable, right? So this stuff works pretty good to remove the adhesive, because I guess I should start with the first step. The first step is getting this just old thin metal knife, putty knife, whatever you want to call it, underneath the artwork, and then just kind of doing this, wiggling it down so that the artwork lifted up, and then peel the artwork off. And it's like a plastic sheet, but it leaves all of the adhesive still stuck to the panel. And some of the artwork, even the silver artwork you could see, was still like in the adhesive. So that makes it even tougher to get the adhesive off, because it's all of the adhesive, and the top layer tends to be, I think it's a transition layer between the plastic overlay that has the art printed on it and the adhesive, and so it's kind of hard to get through. If you use a heat gun when you're pulling this stuff off, it will remove some of the adhesive, but then you have to juggle a putty knife, a heat gun, the panel, and it's I don't know that it saves any time, because it's just a pain in the neck to use that method. So pulled the overlay off with the putty knife and scraped as much of it off as I could on the around the bends and everything. So mostly what I was left with is total adhesive and some black paint where the overlay in this whole area here, the overlay was pretty much gone, and it was just rusted metal. So yeah, I used to take this, which is extremely flammable, which is extremely toxic odor, which evaporates really quickly. So I just start in an area and kind of let it soak in for a bit, and before it dries, then try scraping it. And it usually takes several applications, and it takes forever because you're doing small areas at a time, because the bigger area, it'll evaporate, and then once it evaporates, it's almost like it's, you got to just put it back on again, because it needs to be semi-moist to be able to get the goop adhesive to scrape off. So once it re-dries, it's really hard to get it off still. So it used quite a bit of this, and like it says, it can, you can spontaneously combust basically in a hot environment, or out here in my laundry room. Not that this is where I was using it, but there's a gas water heater there, and you don't want these fumes anywhere near that. So really toxic, really hard to work with, uses a lot of the product to get a control panel done. So I heard on the forums somebody suggested Citris Strip. Now, I had never used Citris Strip for anything until I got my Atari/Midway War Final Assault cabinet, which you can look for videos on that on my channel. That cabinet had vinyl artwork that I wanted to reveal that had been painted over black, and so I tried Citris Strip because a lot of people said it works good on those type cabinets. Again, read up before you use any paint stripper on any cabinet, because different companies used, some companies used painted stencils, some used vinyl art, some vinyl art is more robust than others. So read up on what kind of cabinet you have if you're going to try and strip an actual cabinet, trying to strip paint off to get to the original artwork, because this might not be your best solution. It might be alcohol with magic erasers, or Goo Gone, which is like a weaker version of this that's citrus based and not as toxic as this. So, but for this control panel, I just don't care, because this is metal. I know it's not going to hurt the metal. I just need it to eat through the adhesive. So I knew this was basically plan A until I read that Citris Strip works, and I remembered I had just a little bit left after doing that War Final Assault cab. And I thought, well, I might as well give it a try, because I haven't thrown this away, even though there's only a little bit left, because I thought, well, maybe something will come up that'll need it, and, it did. So this is the gel, as it says, which makes it better than this. This is, I believe this is acetone based, not positive, but I think it is. And it just evaporates so fast. This gel keeps the stuff from evaporating, so that made it an attractive thing to try, because hopefully you wouldn't use as much, because it would stay on the panel longer before it evaporated, so it could do its work, so you'd use less of the product. And then the other thing is, it just has a light orange smell. It's not, obviously it says caution eye and skin irritants. You don't want to touch it, but it doesn't spontaneously combust like this stuff does, and the fumes aren't super toxic like this stuff. This very light orange smell, and it goes away pretty fast too. It's not like this stuff just reeks until that stuff evaporates. So seems safer to me to use. And with the gel, I knew that it would stay longer on the panel, so I gave it a shot, and I only did about this much. And that comes from working with this stuff where I am used to just doing small areas at a time and working my way down the control panel. So I started here, and I had to figure out how long I wanted to put it on. So at first I put it on for 15 minutes and came back and scraped, and I was not impressed. It pretty much didn't get anything off. I scraped really hard. In fact, you can see this area here. There are some scrapes in the panel. That won't show after painting and putting an overlay on. They're not that deep. But you can kind of see over here that there aren't as many scratches. That I don't think I did. I think that was already there. But these scratches were because I was pressing so hard, because I tried, and actually it wasn't on this edge, it was right here. That's right, it shows a spot in the middle that wasn't near any holes. 15 minutes didn't do it. So I figured, okay, well, it hadn't evaporated at all. And I did this last night in my garage. It was a super hot day. I think it was the first day in the 80s this year. So the garage was probably at least 75 degrees by the time I got out there and did this. And the Citris Strip that I put on didn't even look like any of it had evaporated. It was still had a coating of it on there. So I went back and I put some more on for half an hour, and then this area came off fairly well. So I thought, okay, that seems to be working. So I put some more over here, and I got the edge off, leaving it on for half an hour, but I was still doing quite a bit of scraping. So then I figured, well, it's still not evaporating after half an hour. I might as well try an hour. So the next section I did was about here. I can't remember if I went past this hole or just to this hole. It might have just been to the hole. So this area here, and I put it on for an hour. And when I came back, it was pretty much just scrape, one scrape, and it pretty much all came off. So I'm like, okay, 1 hour seems to be the minimum you should do. That seems to be really working really easy. So it leaves giant gooey mess that try and pick up with this and use paper towels to get rid of the gooey adhesive and the leftover Citris Strip. And then I just moved down the panel, same thing. I did a section about that big. And then to these buttons. I think it was 1, 2, 3. I think I did about 5 different applications. I was up pretty late last night. But once I got the hour to the hour mark, that seemed to work really well, where I can just come out and pretty much scrape it. There might be a little bit left, but I just take the gooey gummy Citris Strip blobs that were left and kind of spread it over areas that might not have come up, and let it sit for another couple minutes and scrape it, and those areas seem to come off. So as you can see, pretty much most of the flat area across this panel is got all the adhesive, and yes, it's going to take the paint off. That was to be expected. So really happy with the way that works, and any more Atari control panels, this is definitely going to be the way I'm going to do it. The combination of being less toxic than this stuff and being able to just put it on, walk away for an hour and come back, as opposed to this where I constantly am am trying to work it in and scrape and paper towels, and I'm wearing gloves. I didn't wear gloves with this. A couple times I got stuff on my hands, but mostly it was from the paint because it is a paint remover. The back didn't have any adhesive on it, but the stuff runs through the holes. So you can see there is now, like right in between those two buttons, there is some adhesive there because it kind of dribbled from the front into the back. So I will be going over the back, but again, that was expected. Oh yeah, I forgot there's 2 extra holes for the joystick that they had put in. I forgot about those holes. So there's 10 little holes I need to fill. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to share that this is what I had been using, and this is what I would recommend now, especially for Atari control panels. I kind of poured it on, and then I spread it out with the putty knife, but not like butter on toast. I kind of went like this, and kind of worked it into a rectangular area. So where I, touched down, you could sometimes see through to some of the black. I guess it's probably the undercoat of the control panel, or the black that's underneath the adhesive, whatever. You could see through to the black, but you could tell that there was still product there. It just wasn't as thick as, the other areas. So it doesn't have to be orange all the way across, is what I'm trying to say. You can get it to the point where there's some areas that you can see through the product, but it's still got a coating. The other thing I will do different, and when I do this, and this side, and if I do any more panels, is I will remember I'm not using this. So instead of doing an area like that big, and then an area that big, and an area that big, I would probably do thirds. I'd probably go maybe to the first button, and then maybe the next one over here to this button, and then this for the third part. The reason I wouldn't do the whole thing at once is because you'll get so much of that gooey, globby stuff you're pushing around. More of it's going to fall through the holes onto the table, or I'm doing this on the garage floor, onto the floor, or wherever you're doing it. So still, I would recommend doing like maybe thirds, just to minimize the mess of the goop that's coming off. But yeah, I was very happy with the results from this. Just put it on, walk it away, no scrubbing. I mean, I will have to scrub. There's still all these little black things you see are some adhesive plus, the paint. So it's not 100% clean. In fact, I might use this to do the final wipe down and clean of that. Just because I'll use gloves, this in a paper towel, whereas this being a gel would be more messy. So I'll probably use that for the final cleanup. But for getting the heavy, thick adhesive, that stuff just doesn't scrape off. You need something to eat through the adhesive before you can scrape it. Try the Citris Strip. I think you will be pleasantly surprised if you had used Goof Off before, or if you haven't done a control panel and you're not sure what you want to try. I would say Citris Strip. And I didn't have much left, and I still do have some in there. I'm sure I have enough to do these parts that I have left, but that one container I'm pretty sure that I only had one container. That one container did the entire War Final Assault cabinet. And if you haven't seen that, it's like a Mortal Kombat or a Blitz football or an NBA basketball cabinet. It's a 25-inch monitor, huge cabinet with a huge control panel. I didn't need to do the control panel top, but I did the sides of the control panel and both sides and the front of the cabinet. And it just took that one container and didn't even take all of it. So the slight issue I'm going to have here doing the top and bottom is This control panel just happens to sit flat because that tab right there that the latch holds onto to hold it onto the Cabaret just happens to be made so it's like perfectly level with this part of the control panel. So when it sits, it's perfectly level. You can tell that the front lip is lower because it tips, but it was perfect for just laying it like this and having that orange, the citrus strip on it. And it didn't, like I said, it went into some of the holes a little bit, but it wasn't like all coming off of one side. So I think I'm gonna maybe get a couple wood blocks and try and keep it upright when I use the citrus strip on this front lip. So I might end up having to use the Goof Off depending on whether that works or not, whether I can get the product to stay on there for an hour. I don't think it'll be too hard, just a couple blocks of wood or something. Like just get a couple things of soap or something like that to do it. But yeah, give that a try if you're going to do, especially an Atari control panel where you take the control panel overlay off and a lot of times the artwork comes off but all the adhesive is there. Citrus strip, put it on for an hour, put it on thick enough that some of the areas you can't see through, but some you can, just as long as you know you've got the product on the whole area. And go away for an hour and come back and scrape it, and you can adjust that time too. If it wasn't like 75 degrees, I probably could have even gone an hour and a half and it might have been even easier. I'm not sure at what point. I'm sure there's a point where you put it on too long where it starts to dry and just turns into a dried up flaky mess, which is what this stuff kind of does when it dries, turns into kind of a powder. But start with an hour, and then if that doesn't quite work for you, try going longer, because it's not gonna, again, it shouldn't hurt the metal. It doesn't look like it hurt the metal at all, so you don't really have anything to lose. And it's much more convenient to just walk away from the thing from an hour than it is to sit there constantly scrubbing with the hazardous, smelly, flammable Goof Off product for an hour, which probably would have only got me like that much in an hour, maybe to there in an hour. I mean, the stuff, it works, but you have to keep it on. You have to keep it moist. And yeah, you don't worry about it with the Citris Strip Gel because it's a gel. So there you go. Little advice on how to strip an Atari control panel. Probably others, metal control panels are the exact same.